The rain hammered against the windows of our little cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Alaric, a 43-year-old software engineer, had always considered myself a logical man, a man of systems and order. But the chaos that had erupted in my life defied all logic, all reason. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Braunt, my wife of 15 years, a vibrant landscape artist, began acting distant. Our evenings, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, became strained silences punctuated by the clatter of dishes and the hum of the television. She'd always been passionate about her art, but lately she was consumed by it, spending hours locked away in her studio, emerging with tired eyes and a vague excuse about a difficult commission. I dismissed it initially. Artists are temperamental, I reasoned. Inspiration comes and goes. But then came the late nights at art workshops and the increasingly frequent business trips to London. I started noticing the little things: the lingering scent of a cologne that wasn't mine, the hushed phone calls she'd take outside, the way she'd flinch when I touched her. My gut churned with a suspicion I desperately tried to ignore. Braunt was my rock, my confidant, the woman I had built my life around. The thought of her betraying me was unthinkable, a violation of everything I believed in. One Tuesday, Braunt told me she had a gallery opening in London and wouldn't be back until late the following day. I kissed her goodbye, a hollow gesture, and watched her drive away, a knot tightening in my stomach. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, haunted by a nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. Around 3 a.m. I gave in. I went downstairs and opened my laptop, intending to lose myself in work. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard and a darker impulse took over. I knew it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. I logged into our shared email account, the one we used for bills and household correspondence. I told myself I was just checking for an important invoice, but deep down I knew what I was looking for, and then I found it. An email buried deep in the sent folder, a message to someone named Lysander with the subject line "Tonight." My heart hammered in my chest as I clicked it open. The words swam before my eyes, a torrent of passionate declarations and explicit details about their rendezvous. My world tilted on its axis. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The air left my lungs and I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of books. The room spun and I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to stay upright. Lysander. Who the hell was Lysander? The email contained an address, a hotel in central London. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a burning rage. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to tear the world apart. But I forced myself to take a deep breath, to regain control. I wouldn't confront her over email. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of hearing my pain secondhand. I made a decision, a cold, calculated decision. I would go to London. I would see for myself. I booked the first train to London and arrived at Paddington Station just before noon. The city was a blur of noise and faces, none of which registered. I was a man on a mission, driven by a singular purpose: to confront my wife and the man she was betraying me with. The hotel was a boutique establishment in a quiet neighborhood. I walked into the lobby, my hands clammy, my face a mask of forced calm. I asked the receptionist for Lysander's room number, claiming I had a package to deliver. She hesitated, but a generous tip convinced her to cooperate. Room 308. I took the stairs, each step a physical effort. The air grew thick with anticipation, with dread. I reached the door, my hand trembling as I raised it to knock, but then I stopped. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I pressed my ear against the door. At first, I heard nothing. Then a muffled sound, a woman's giggle. My blood ran cold. I pressed harder, straining to hear more. And then I heard Braunt's voice, clear and unmistakable, saying his name. That was all I needed. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my shoulder against the door, the flimsy lock splintering with a loud crack. The door flew open and I stumbled into the room. The scene that greeted me was like a punch to the face. Braunt was in bed, tangled in the sheets, her face flushed. A man, handsome and arrogant-looking, sat up beside her, his eyes widening in shock. It was Lysander in the flesh. Time seemed to slow down, the air thick with disbelief and betrayal. Braunt gasped, scrambling for the covers, her eyes filled with panic. "Alaric, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words caught in my throat, choked by a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I just stood there staring at them, my mind reeling. Lysander, recovering from his initial shock, smirked. Well, 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 look what the cat dragged in. You must be the cuckold, that was it. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at him, grabbing him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. He sputtered and struggled, but I held on tight, my grip tightening. Alaric. Stop it, you're hurting him, Bront screamed, trying to pull me away. But I was beyond reason, consumed by a primal rage. I didn't want to kill him, but I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel the pain I was feeling, the pain of betrayal, of humiliation. I released him, shoving him away. He stumbled backward, gasping for air, his face red and blotchy. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of here and never come near my wife again. Lysander didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled out of bed, grabbed his clothes, and fled the room, leaving Bront and me alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Bront sat on the bed, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. Alaric, I can explain, she stammered. Explain, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could lie to me, cheat on me, and humiliate me. It just happened, she said, her voice muffled by her hands. It wasn't supposed to, it just happened, I repeated, incredulous. You just happened to fall into bed with another man. You just happened to send him love letters. You just happened to plan a romantic getaway behind my back. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was undeniable, staring us both in the face. I don't understand, I said, my voice cracking. What did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? It's not you, Alaric, she said, finally looking up at me, her eyes red and swollen. It's me. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. Not happy, I said, my voice rising. Not happy. Is that why you cheated on me? Because you weren't happy. You couldn't talk to me. You couldn't tell me what was wrong. I tried, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But you wouldn't listen. You were always so busy with work, so preoccupied with your own life. I felt invisible. Her words stung, but I knew they weren't entirely true. I had been busy, yes, but I had always made time for her. I had always tried to be a good husband, a supportive partner. That's a load of rubbish, Bront, I said, shaking my head. You're just trying to justify your actions. You cheated on me because you wanted to, because you're selfish and unfaithful. She flinched as if I had slapped her. But I didn't care. I was done with her excuses, with her lies. I'm leaving, I said, turning to walk away. I'm filing for divorce, and I never want to see you again. Alaric, please, she said, reaching out to me. Don't do this. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. He stopped and looked back at her, my eyes filled with contempt. There's nothing to work out, Bront. You broke my heart, you destroyed our marriage, and you betrayed my trust. It's over. I walked out of the hotel room, out of her life, and into the unknown. The rain was still falling, washing away the remnants of my shattered dreams. I felt numb, empty, like a part of me had died. The train ride back to the Cotswolds was a blur. I stared out the window, watching the countryside rush by, but I saw nothing. My mind was a blank slate, devoid of thought, of emotion. When I arrived back at the cottage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Everything reminded me of Bront, her paintings on the walls, her clothes in the closet, her scent in the air. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't bear to be surrounded by the ghosts of our past. I packed a bag, throwing in a few essentials, and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house, in that town, any longer. I drove for hours, aimlessly wandering through the countryside until I reached a small coastal town. I checked into a cheap hotel, a far cry from the cozy cottage I had left behind. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating, barely sleeping. I couldn't shake the image of Bront in bed with Lysander, the sound of her voice saying his name. The pain was constant, a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I needed to do something, to take control of my life, to find a way to move on. I started by contacting a lawyer, filing for divorce, and severing all ties with Bront. I sold the cottage, dividing the proceeds as fairly as possible, even though she didn't deserve it. I then decided to make a change. I quit my job, packed my belongings, and moved to a new city, a place where no one knew me, where I could start fresh. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt like giving up, when the pain was too much to bear. But I kept going, one step at a time, slowly rebuilding my life. I found a new job, made new friends, and discovered new passions. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. It was therapeutic, a way to express my emotions, to channel my pain into something beautiful years past. The pain of Brant's betrayal faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I learned to forgive her not for her sake but for my own. One day I received a letter. It was from Brant. She wrote that she was sorry for what she had done, that she regretted her actions, and that she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her. I read the letter, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I didn't hate her anymore, but I didn't love her either. She was just a memory, a chapter in my life that had come to a close. I didn't respond to her letter. There was nothing left to say. I had moved on, found happiness, and built a new life for myself. I learned a valuable lesson from Brant's betrayal. That trust is a fragile thing, that love can be fleeting, and that sometimes the only way to heal is to let go and move on. I never remarried. I enjoyed my solitude, my freedom. I traveled the world, pursued my passions, and lived life on my own terms. And though the scars of Brant's betrayal remained, they served as a reminder of my strength, my resilience, and my ability to overcome even the most devastating of heartbreaks. I learned that I could survive, and even thrive after the storm. Years later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Brant's affair with Lysander had ended badly. He had left her for a younger woman, leaving her heartbroken and alone. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with her. I didn't feel any satisfaction, any joy. I just felt indifference. Her fate was no longer my concern. I had my own life to live, my own happiness to pursue. And as I sat on my balcony watching the sun set over the ocean, I knew that I had finally found peace. I had survived Brant's betrayal, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. That night, I went to a local pub. A woman came up to me and asked if the seat next to me was free. Her name was Imogen, and we talked for hours. I found I wasn't against the idea of a relationship anymore, but I would be more careful. I would never let myself be as vulnerable as I had been with Brant. The experience had changed me, but I was still open to the possibility of love. I told Imogen about my past, about Brant, about the betrayal. She listened patiently, her eyes filled with compassion. When I finished, she took my hand and said, "You're a strong man, Alaric. You deserve to be happy." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I was ready to open my heart again. Maybe, just maybe, I could find love again, a love that was true, honest, and lasting. The rain had stopped, the clouds had parted, and the sun was shining brightly. It was a new day, a new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it with all its possibilities, with all its challenges. My life had been shattered, but I had pieced it back together, stronger and more beautiful than before. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all.